Okay, my friends, we are back, and today we will be working on the mag grills, the replacement parts that I purchased. Those resin parts I've already kind of prepped, so we will work on getting those put in, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you on one of these. But let me show you what they look like, and this is of course from the previous video. You saw these parts that I had prepped. I basically this is resin, so what I did is I painted them flat black first, and then I went by and I or I brush dried, should I say. I brush dried the grills with a copper. And so I may do a little more touch-up work on these mag grills before I actually install them into the into where they should be here. But before I even install these, I've got to prep this area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the already molded piece in place by drilling holes through these grills in a circular pattern, and then removing the whole grill. And then we're going to place a piece of styrene on the back side of this, and then try to get it as flat as possible on the front side. And I may have to even use some putty to do that. And then once that's done, we can then install this. So while this is drying and everything, I'll go ahead and retouch up this. Now, just to let you all know, what's been kind of delaying this build for me is other things have happened in life. And I'm also being a little more patient, probably extremely more patient, with working on the Aztec patterns on the saucer section. I'm letting the shimmering paint dry for a good day or two before I move on to the next shimmering paint layer. And I'm doing that because of my experience with that shimmering paint coming off while I'm removing masks and putting the other layers of paint on that. So I'm hoping that this works, and I'll see if that happens. So for now, while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to work on this. So to drill this out, I've got a choice of several different drill bits. I'm going to go ahead and use the Dremel 7/64 inch drill bit on this set. And by the way, you definitely will need a Dremel set. I've got the 300 series. This is an older series. There's newer Dremels out there. I'll put a link in the bio to a Dremel tool. But if you're tackling any kind of 350 scale ship, or any ship whatsoever, these Dremel tools come in very, very handy. So I definitely recommend these. But I'm going to go ahead and use that 7/64 bit, and I'm going to start drilling these out. So let's go ahead and take care of that and show you what that looks like. Okay, so you can see here where it's very uneven, right? And needs to be cleaned up. And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to clean that up. But I want to point out here that as I was drilling, I went in very gently. The reason you want to be careful, you don't want to attack, you do not want to attack this with a drill, crazy attack it, because that drill bit could bounce up and then you end up messing up some of the side housing here and the areas that should be smooth. So you want to make sure that you go in real gently, make sure that little drill bit hole starts. And then once you see it starting, then you can push in a little and be gentle with it as you're pushing in, okay? Something else to be aware of is when you're using this drill bit, it's going to create like these holes all around, and the edges are very, they're very shaped. They're shaped very oddly and all that. So you're going to need to come by and clean it up with something different. I have a little sanding bit for my Dremel, and you can buy this separately. Some Dremels come with this stuff. If you buy a Dremel set that has a whole bunch of parts or bits with it, you're going to probably get a sanding bit. So I'm going to go in and sand it once I clean this all up. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and start trying to clean this up with another little bit that cuts through. And so let's show you how that works. As you can see here, my friends, it's still not perfect, and the ridges are still high at the edges there. I want to get those smooth and out of the way. So I'm going to continue working on this very gently and very patiently. Now, my friends, you're going to probably scratch up parts of this here and there. That's okay. This isn't painted yet. It's not prepped yet, primed, nothing like that. So as you can see, I scratched a little bit here. There's a few scratches here that came on the kit already, actually. But the important parts, the lifted squares here, are still lifted. And you're going to paint and putty this up and fix it. So if you scratch something up, if you mess something up, a corner here or there, it's nothing that a little perfect plastic putty can't fix. So I'm almost there, not quite, but let me just kind of measure what this looks like so far. And there you have it. We've got the grill there, and I can tell because I can tell there's still quite a bit more that I need to take off. The front comes down, the back does not, and that's because there's some pieces. There are some pieces here at the bottom that still need to come off. So I'm going to continue working on that off camera, and then we'll come back for the second part of this, okay? All right, I'll be right back. Well, okay, after a bit of finagling here, however you pronounce that, I've got kind of a clean look here. Now it's not exactly straight on this edge here. So you're going to see that this thing doesn't fit exactly straight in, but what I'm going to do, and it's kind of hard to see, so I think it'll be okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start the process of, and I already cut this up. All I did is I eyed it. I didn't really measure very much. I just kind of eyed this and you know, put it in there. I got a little piece. I started cutting it, and I cut it to the size I thought. So the back here, this does not need to be like pretty because it's going to be hidden. So that doesn't need to be pretty. What it needs to be is covering like the whole inside. So you see that, how it covers everything? That's the important part, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start the process of gluing this on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little glue on the edges here. And I'm doing it, like I said earlier, I'm doing this before any kind of paint or primer because I want to glue plastic to plastic to get a solid, I want it to glue on in a very solid way so it doesn't come off later after the model's done, right? So plastic to plastic using this glue that's made for plastic models, liquid cement, will melt this stuff together. And once it melts together, you are good to go. So I'm going to let that dry. And while I let it dry, I'm going to start working on the other one. And then I'm going to start the painting process. So this will really dry nicely. I'll just make sure it's covering everything. Yep, it's covering everything there. And what I'm going to do next, after doing that, once I do this here, I'm going to cut another piece of styrene and put it in here and try to cut it to shape so that it has a flat fit from here to the back. And once that's done, we'll glue it on, and then we'll put the actual grill onto this. So it's a process. So I'm going to take care of that. Let's go ahead and get started while this is drying. Let's get started on the other one, and I'll be right back, my friends. All right, everybody. Just want to show you what I just finished doing and kind of the process I'm going through. So this I'm doing as I'm working on other pieces of the Enterprise. That's how complicated a build this is if you really want to do it as much as close to possible as you can correctly. So I just finished spraying the gold tertiary pattern onto the bottom half of the saucer. So it's freshly painted. As I move this in the light, you can kind of see some of the shimmering colors there, specifically the gold happening. You know, so what I did is I did the initial blue pattern, then I went and I did the gold, red, green patterns while the masking was still on there, the Aztec masking. And as I was coloring, or painting, should I say, the gold, blue, red, and green, I was also painting the gold, blue, red, and green rim colors. So if I was doing gold, I take out everything I labeled G for gold, capital G, and do the gold secondary pattern as well as the rim gold here. And then, of course, I did the same thing with the the red and the green and all that and the blue. So what I'm going to do, and by the way, the other thing to mention, in a previous video, I talked about how I was frustrated because I felt like the masking, I was pulling it up and it was taking lots of the colors off the bottom. Well, that doesn't seem to be happening as much on this side anymore. And I'll tell you what the difference is. Two things. Number one, actually three things. Number one, my mix of paint. I added a little more lacquer to the paint to thin it out even more, because these shimmering colors specifically, and especially the shimmering gold and the shimmering red, have so much of this powdery substance that makes them shimmer in the paint that you really need to tone it down even more. So I made it even more liquidy by adding more lacquer to it. I'm going to say that, man, I can't give you a ratio. Guys, I can't give you a ratio because I kind of eyed it and I tested it as I went. So you want to mix that ratio to where it's a little more liquidy than normal. The other thing, that's number one. Number two was I did a larger flow on the PSI on the compressor. Instead of having it at 2025, I kicked it up to 40. Now, I did that because I noticed that on the tip of my airbrush here, on the tip, there was some leftover flakiness from the powder in the paint. And when that happens, that means either you're not as liquidy on the paint or your PSI is low. So I liquefied the paint, still got that. So I kicked it up to 40 PSI or 45 PSI, one of those. And that laid the paint out really nice and no more flaky substance on the tip of the needle. And then the third thing I did, number three, I let the paint actually dry between layers 24 hours at least. And that is what is taking me as long as it is to put out these updates. Every single layer has dried over a day, sometimes two, before I went on to the next layer, ensuring that each layer of shimmering colors really cured very, very well. So just wanted to give you a quick update on where the saucer's at. I'm still working on it. I still have red and green to go through on the layers here now that I've already done the gold. And then once that's done, I'm going to work on the edges. I still haven't colored the band, the saucer band yet. So I'm gonna paint that with the same color of paint that I did on the original Enterprise build. This is the whole color I used on the original Enterprise build. I'm going to use this same color that I mixed a long time ago to go ahead and paint the band on the outer side of this ship here. All right. Okay, let's move on to something else. We'll be right back to, well, let's go. We're going to go back to the nacelles to show you where I'm at there. Be right back. All right, everybody. I just finished cleaning up my airbrush after that painting session, and using lacquer first to get rid of all the lacquer, and then kind of cleaning it up with, or finishing it off, topping it off with this airbrush cleaner. On that note, so I just finished, like I said, the gold tones, and then I'm going to move on to the red tones, and then I'll move on to the green tones once the gold tones are fully, completely dry and cured. So I'll come back to this tomorrow or the next day. All right. Now, as promised, just wanted to show you where we're at on the nacelles. So what I ended up doing, like I said previously, is I went ahead and let this dry up. So we've got a solid styrene piece solidly cemented on, plastic to plastic. There's no paint in between that. And then I went through and I got 2 more styrene pieces because they're so thin, and cemented them below here to kind of bring this up to almost level. And then I went ahead and I used some of this perfect plastic putty, and I used some of this perfect plastic putty, and I went ahead and put that on here. So the next step now is to sand all this off and sand it down. And what I'm going to probably do for the sanding piece is I'm going to use a very thick sanding paper. Let me get that. I'll be right back. Okay, so like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very gritty piece of sandpaper, something that's pretty rough. This feels very rough here. Obviously, if you're keeping track of what the grittiness is, I imagine it's a 180, but these did not come labeled. They're kind of hobby sandpaper pieces, so I'm just going by what I feel, and for sure, this feels very, very gritty. And I'm going to go ahead and sand down and smooth down this area here so that it's pretty smooth, and I'm able to put in the piece that I need to put in. Now, that being said, because of the angle and the way this is set up, it's going to be a rough ride. So I'm going to work on this off camera, and I may use other things to sand this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try something like this. And I may even go and try something like this, although I'm very hesitant to, because I don't want to mess this up to where there's, dips in the smoothness. So we will continue to work on this. And then the plan is to get this smooth enough to where I can paint the whole thing. And so I'm going to paint the whole thing black on the inside, and then do the gray on the outside. And then I'll go into detail painting all this area. And then at the end, I want to detail paint this, the blue that it should be and all this, before I put in the grills, so that the grills or the paint lines are really crisp. So that's the plan. Let me go ahead and continue with that, and I'll come right back. And what's going to take me maybe an hour or less, or maybe a day, depending on if I come back to it right now, should only take you a few seconds, because you'll come back to more of a almost completed project. All right, be right back, my friends. Hey, everybody, we're back. I did the first one, and I thought, I really should show you, what I did and how I did it and all that. So first one's done. I went ahead and smoothed it out, and, I test fitted the part. Now, when this is painted, it won't look as bad as it does right here, because the paint will cover that all up, and it is pretty smooth. It looks really smooth right now. But the other thing is that the grill covers up most of the part that doesn't look smooth anyway. What we're doing is we're adding enough putty and styrene down there so that this lays and has something to glue onto, right? So as you can see here, this is a pretty good fit right there. And it's going to look really nice once all the paint is put in and comes out. But to get to this point, I want to show you kind of the process that I'm going through. It's not a pretty process at all. And some of you may have more efficient ways of doing this. This is just the way that I'm doing it. So I'm finding that this tool here is really, really helpful. And you need to have a filing tool like this, set like this, that includes, like a rounded tool and, of course, a flat tool. And there's a few other tools that come with this set that at this point are somewhere. I just tend to use these quite a bit. But there was a lot of putty down here. And by the way, I let the putty cure for about 2 days before doing this. So just FYI on that. And all this was full of putty, and I ended up taking it off simply by scraping using this flat tool, because it has a line, and putting a little pressure on the points that I need to put pressure on. And of course, that takes off most of the putty, and I'm using the edge as well to kind of take some of these areas out. Now, what I'm doing, I'm following up. I'm not just using this little tool here, because obviously then it'll leave the surface kind of rough. But after I finish to the point where I'm satisfied with that it's kind of down there, there's still a lot of putty around these edges. So now I'm going in with this, and I'm taking the putty off the edges. This is the gritty, very, very gritty piece of sandpaper that will scrape off any remaining putty that I want to take off. And I'm using this on the edges. Now it's going to leave scratches, but not to worry. When you come back in with the other sandpaper, which is not as gritty, and you kind of do this in levels of grittiness, right? You start with the very, very gritty, maybe 180 grit, and then you go to a 400 grit, and then a 600, and a 1200 grit sandpaper, and that kind of smooths out all these little markings and the scratches, and it helps kind of conceal them. But then, of course, once you paint all this, that'll all go away. All these scratches and things will go away. So this is the grittiest sandpaper I can feel. And then, of course, this grayish is gritty, but not as gritty as this one. So I'm going to use this one to start smoothing out some of this. Feels very smooth. Let's try this again. There you go, much better. Yes, that is much better. That works great. And that looks great. All right, this is gonna work, my friends. Perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and kind of finish up fixing some of this, some of these scratches that, let me see if I can show it. Yeah, there's some scratching here around this detail. I'm gonna fix that up with some fine sandpaper. And then next step here is to paint the inside black and start working on painting both sides of these nacelles black. I think, let me check the other side of the nacelle. Yeah, we still need to work on these nacelles. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other side of these nacelles, and then we'll paint them both black and on the inside and start getting ready for the wiring on the inside. But like I said, my friends, we're going back and forth on these on this build. So I went ahead and I'm finishing up the painting of the saucer section, and while that's drying, I'm trying to finish up the other pieces of the model. I started on the body. I started on the secondary hull deflector housing. In fact, show you where I'm at with that. So I painted all this. It's all painted, and I primed it, or should I say I prepped the surface of it with some matte clear coat, and this is ready to be painted with the Aztec pattern painting, and I'll do that separately on this particular piece, and we'll get that in another video. All right, my friends, thanks a lot for joining me. Please, you're going to help me. If you want to help and support my channel, please subscribe. Please like the video. Don't forget to do that, and I'll be so appreciative. Thank you so much for helping me reach 400 plus followers, or subscribers, should I say. I'm going to continue to put out these videos and build this channel. I'm enjoying it. It's a great hobby of mine. And as I can find time to do it, I'm doing it. All right, my friends, sorry for the mess. This is part of the hobby that we do. It makes a mess, but you clean it up right afterwards. And we'll see you next time at the next video. Until then, have fun, everybody.